Okay, Richard, if it were legal in Texas to carry while you vote, would you?
Absolutely. How about you?
Well, are you gonna mean mug me if I don't vote for who you want me to vote for?
No. I'm gonna do like those Kamala Harris commercials and be like the guy standing over. You voted the right way, huh?
We're the Armed Attorneys. Today we are talking about carrying and voting. Tomorrow is election day and we are ready to go. We're going to talk about what the consequences for carrying while you vote are. We're going to talk about whether Bruen would uphold restrictions on not carrying in polling places. And finally, if it is allowed, should you carry while you vote? But before we get started, show your support for the Second Amendment by hitting the like button. Richard, what are you most looking forward to when the election's over?
I mean, recovering from a hangover?
That's a good one. That's a good one.
No, I'm cautiously optimistic. Nobody knows what's gonna. If anybody
Nobody
says they
knows.
know what's gonna happen, they don't. I have my preferences. I know about half the other side of the country has different preferences.
Well,
But
as a garbage woman myself, I'm cautiously optimistic. However, I am most looking forward to maybe YouTube will show our videos to people again.
yes, I will
once the
say
election's done.
that does happen. I mean,
Yeah.
if we talk about YouTube censorship, the finger gets pressed on the scale a little bit during an election season.
We're not even overtly political. Like, I guess in so much as there is one side of the aisle that more supports gun rights, like, yes, obviously I
One
gravitate.
side supports the execution of social media squirrels.
Right. Like, fine. Like, yeah, you obviously like, okay, but like,
Yeah.
man. Anyway, here we are.
So we took a survey of states. I would say the overwhelming majority, if you're looking to go vote in person tomorrow, the overwhelming majority of states prohibit statutorily carrying in polling locations.
That is correct. And I think that it is one of those things. In fact, I actually spoke to a man last week who said, I know it's prohibited. It is, in fact, here in Texas, prohibited. But what are the consequences? And you have I'm sure you have that conversation with people all the time, right? Which is like, what's the risk benefit to breaking the law?
Sure.
And sometimes it's like, go break the law.
Well,
But this is not one of those times.
no, we
And also,
as lawyers we don't tell anybody.
can't tell anyone to break the law. But you can say, there is a small fine associated with breaking this law. Use your best judgment. And people say, great, I'm going to break the law. And you say, okay.
Yes, I mean, that's the job of the lawyer. You tell them what their options are, the possible consequences, the pros and cons. Ultimately, you're the captain of your own ship. You decide. Some states have extreme penalties. I'll say Texas has a very strict penalty on carrying in a polling place during an election or early voting. It's up to 10 years in prison,
Yeah.
up to a $10,000 fine.
You're a convicted felon.
Yeah, so, I mean, we look at, all right, risk analysis. That's a pretty severe risk.
Oh, yeah. That's what I told that guy, too. I was like, if you're going to mess around with anything, not this one.
Yeah, and with a lot of these things, with every rule, there's an exception. Here in Texas, for example, it's a exception to the application of that law that you are the election judge in that polling location. We treat those folks the same as elected district court judges. District court judges are, they're cut out from our prohibited places list. So you will want to familiarize with your state's law, but you might see some exceptions like that. Maybe it even applies to poll workers.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, really, it does vary state by state. The vast majority of states do not let you carry at the polls, but if you are a poll worker, I mean, you should consult your state's law and figure it out.
And this whole conversation brings up an interesting question. We have New York State Rifle and Pistol Association v. Bruen. This gave us the framework by which we judge infringements to the Second Amendment. Hey, does this affect the right to keep and bear arms, wearing, carrying? Absolutely. All right, presumptively unconstitutional under that standard. But then we look at the text of the Second Amendment as informed by history and tradition, things that think colonial era laws. Is this something that those states would have regulated at the time of the adoption of the Second Amendment, 1791? And this is, I will say, this is an interesting question for constitutional lawyers and gun owners.
It is, because I think by and large, when we look at our firearm restrictions, most of them do not pass Bruen muster. However, I think there is some historical tradition for the prohibition on firearms when you are casting your ballot.
Yeah, and this is, I mean, and again, I think there's no such thing as a good gun law. I haven't seen a gun law that I like. But you look at, all right, if this is the standard we're going to apply, let's just say, okay, maybe this isn't the way we want the world to be. But if you look at the standard, there is some precedent for, you look at places of political deliberation, think legislatures, think courts, think election booths and boxes. There may be a tradition of this.
True. And, I suppose in a way you understand, right? Because, like, I don't want to go to the polls and have, like, a mob of people in their, Jill Stein shirts, open carrying, like, mean mugging me till I am, like, all the way down to the Green Party. But you understand where historically that might come from. But it does make it, I think, one of our exceptions to the Bruen rule potentially, in that there's a better argument for it than there are for most of them.
Yeah, and outside of, and generally when we talk about statutorily prohibited places, typically we mean the area itself, maybe the building, the area immediately surrounding it. Your state's law is going to vary, but you see some states have even gone a step further and prohibited the carrying around demonstrations around these polling locations, and maybe the polling location isn't off limits, or maybe it is off limits, but they've gone the step further and expanded the boundary. So you really have to be careful about this. But I do see a lot of times where the First and Second Amendment are intertwined. You're demonstrating, obviously you want to show your support for the Second Amendment. And so I think that might be an unconstitutional infringement. Maybe it implicates the First Amendment there. But we see, obviously check with your state's law, but virtually every state is going to prohibit the polling location. Outside of that, maybe a little bit iffy, but I know a lot of folks might think, hey, is my car a viable option?
Generally, it is. And I will say this is a general survey, so your mileage may vary depending on what state you are in. But generally speaking, when we look at state prohibitions on where you can and cannot carry firearms, if a place is prohibited, that almost always means the place itself and the parking lot is generally available to you. You could leave your gun in the car and go inside. Again, I hope you heard how many times I said generally and largely, and because this is, no state specificity here, but for the most part, that is going to be true. Again, consult your state's law to be certain. Okay, Richard, if it were legal in Texas to carry while you vote, would you?
Absolutely. How about you?
Well, are you going to mean mug me if I don't vote for who you want me to vote for?
No. I'm going to do like those Kamala Harris commercials and be like the guy standing over. You voted the right way, huh?
Oh, yeah. Honey. Yes. So, no. Absolutely. The idea that we do not live in a civil society such that we could not conceal carry or open carry for those who do so, just in the way we generally live our lives and go vote, it makes me really sad. And I think the more we treat people like babies, the more the social fabric is going to break down, such that we need to be treated like babies. I know if I were allowed to carry while I voted early, but I would have just, as I always do, it would either be concealed or it would be in my purse. I would walk in, vote, walk out, would not have had to disarm myself, and I would have gone about my day. And I think that is 99.9999% of people. And the idea that, like, you're going to murder someone over their political views just because you are allowed to carry, like, if you're going to murder someone, like, you're going to do it anyway.
Yeah,
But,
I do think it would deter the people who run up with all the leaflets and whatnot, though.
oh, yeah, no one's insulting me about school board if I'm carrying.
But I think that's all to say, hey, maybe, I think it should be permissible. I don't know that the law is there just yet. But this is an important election. Everybody says it's the most important election of a generation. Every election they say that.
Every election they say that.
This is an important one, though.
Big one.
We see a lot of disengaged gun owners. So we talked about this in a previous video. Yeah, I know you're on a group thread with a bunch of your buddies. Make a plan to go vote tomorrow.
Go vote.
Yeah, it's really...
It's tight. It matters.
It does matter.
It matters. Everyone says it matters.
Yeah, but we hope you enjoyed this discussion. If you did, consider subscribing, hitting that like button, and help us fight the anti-2A algorithm by sharing this video.
And let us know in the comments, do you think you should be allowed to carry while voting, or do you think that it is too ripe for intimidation of voters? Until next time, we're the Armed Attorneys.